Hello students, welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Yashika Guleria, Assistant Professor Commerce, Government College Arki, Himachal Pradesh University, Shimla. Today we are going to talk on module Integral Education and Development of Human Values from the paper Human Values and Indian Ethos. After studying this module, you will be able to understand first, value education as a concept and its intention. Second, need for value education. Third, methodology adopted for value education. And fourth, process of value education as intended by the course. Let's start with the value education as a concept and its intentions. Every human being values his own existence beyond most other things. While living, thus he contributes to attach personal values to other objects, thoughts and beings within the parameters of his likes as well as dislikes. As every human being thinks in his own independent and unique manner, the values for similar objects, thoughts or beings may differ except for certain common essentialities. They can be life, air, water, food, etc. It is therefore essential to identify various other common objectives like the common essentialities which may generate identical values in different people. In the absence of such identical responses to certain values, all efforts in terms of value education may remain vague and futile. In spite of different thoughts, patterns, likes, dislikes, values, human wants to live in the society for support, protection and individual prosperity. To meet this end, he must mold his individuality in the common social mold to gain acceptability in the society. This foundation course in value education attempts to identify such essentialities which, when fulfilled, assure fulfillment, growth, prosperity and happiness, not only for an individual but for the entire universal society as a whole. This course has been introduced with the basic intention of making students fully aware of the following facts, that is, first, every human needs to act in order to fulfill his desire. It is the knowledge or wisdom of a person that prompts him into selecting an appropriate action for the fulfillment of his desires. If we equate wisdom with value, the resulting action is the skill with respect to fulfilling a desire. This desires could be right or it could be wrong, and accordingly the resulting actions could be right or wrong. Depending upon such right or wrong actions committed, an individual lands into happy and unhappy life situations. Value education intends to make students aware of the right thinking process leading to right action, which ultimately culminate into fulfillment of aspirations, satisfactions and happiness. Second, though every human being identifies himself as an individual, he is fully dependent on the environment comprising his family, society, country, world, nature, including of all living beings and finally the entire universe. Individually, only physical identity of a person is not enough, as it is his intellectual identity that is important in displaying his skill and abilities to the world around. As the spirit governs the mind and mind controls the body, a person is known by his holistic persona represented by his body, mind and soul. His individual holistic persona is again a tiny speck in the whole existence comprising other living beings and nature. Value education aspires to make every student aware of such a holistic existence on which every individual depends for the fulfillment of his desires. Third, holistic understandings helps a person imbibe ethical thoughts into his thinking system. He understands that every act he commits must at least not be harmful to others, if not beneficial every time. Ethical thoughts lead to moral conduct toward all and sundry. This leads to the interpersonal trust, mutual satisfaction and harmony within the society. Holistic thinking also gives rise to better understanding of the nature and environment that leads to ecological harmony, enriching human life manifold. Value education helps students to understand the necessity of maintaining mutual harmony between human being as well as the nature. Fourth, this foundation course is especially tailor-made for tomorrow's technical personnel. The effects of value education will bring rich dividends to the entire humanity as technology is likely to grow more mature and eco-friendly. Let us come to the another aspect, that is the need for value education. Every individual cherishes desires and aspiration for his life, and he is individually responsible for their fulfillment. This has been the way of life since time immemorial. Some desires are fulfilled and some are not. Some people meekly accept their failure to fulfill their desires and some do not. The cause behind the success of some and the failure of others is mainly wisdom, which differs person to person. This means that the wisdom of every individual is his primary value for developing appropriate skills. Identifying one's own self. In absence of right understanding of self or its aspirations, a person would naturally attempt to fulfill every desire appearing in his mind, if he possibly can. If such a person has picked up unethical values in the process of his upbringing, it is natural for his mind to generate unethical desires. In his attempt to fulfill such desires, he would continue learning the rights and wrongs from his success, failure, acceptable and unacceptable social response. Identifying the aspiration of self. Once clarity is established with respect to ethical and unethical desires, one must attempt to identify the core desire and aspirations of the self in the light of ethical values. There could be any number of aspirations which may be contradictory to each other, and in such a case, happiness of fulfillment of one's aspiration, one needs the skill for balancing his basic needs with his aspiration in life. Such a balance in individual needs and aspiration is generally conducive for a happy and a satisfied life. More often than not, certain aptitudes and skills lie hidden and dormant in a person's subconscious, of which he may not be consciously aware. Actualization of goals. The next stage after identifying one's goal is the action-oriented implementation program for the actualization of such value-based goals and aspiration that have been identified. The stages are discussed and explained earlier are internal exercises, whereas the action-oriented implementation program, apart from self-discipline, needs interaction with the external world. The individual values and skills need to meet approval from the external world. Both self-discipline and real action for actualization can be practiced simultaneously, as self-discipline is a long process. The holistic approach. While committing to action for actualization of one's goal, every action needs to be analyzed in the light of those universal values which are generally acceptable by the society in general. Over and above being an individual, every person is a citizen of his country, and one's action must remain within the framework of the laws of the nation, and they must not jeopardize the interest of the nation as a whole in any manner. Such actions should not be harmful towards the nature, ecology, and life as a whole. This is where value education is needed, as it also guides the students in the direction of universal happiness or goodwill towards everyone. Technology and value education. Technology is a giant capable of meaningful construction and even meaningless destruction also, since it has neither its own brain nor heart. It can create or destruct as the person's wills. However, the human who creates technology has both brains and heart, and that is where value education is needed to train the future technocrats by making them fully aware of both the constructive as well as the destructive aspects of technology. Methodology adopted for value education. The concept and intention of value education as described earlier, including the identified needs for value education, provide the basic guidelines for this newly introduced course. Due to rapidly growing communication and mutual cooperation, the world is getting smaller day by day. Obviously, education system cannot remain restricted to a specific country or community. This necessitates a wide open approach to be adopted in the field of education too, which provides the following guidelines for the course on value education, especially tailored for technical students. Universality. This course contents of value education must be universally acceptable to all the human beings, notwithstanding the geographical, regional, and communal differences. Thus, the course must promote universal human values, not merely those of specifically selected groups. Natural acceptability. Openness to any suggestion or principle depends directly upon a person's natural acceptability. Thus, the methodology adopted for teaching value education and the principles conveyed therein must be naturally acceptable as well as verifiable for every student. One cannot learn something that is not naturally acceptable or verifiable for every student. one cannot learn something that is not naturally acceptable or verifiable from day-to-day life. The word value can be understood in different terms by different persons. A beholder evaluates the world including all animates and inanimate entities from his own point of view. At the same time, he is evaluated by others from their own point of view. Thus, the evaluation of any entity may drastically differ from person to person, and specific point of view may not be acceptable to every person. In such a situation, the teaching of human value and education needs to find a commonly acceptable logic for every value. For example, a person committed to vegetarianism may readily accept the value behind a suggestion of non-violence towards every chicken or goat in contradiction with a non-vegetarian person. However, both of them may simultaneously agree to a suggestion of non-violence in general. Similarly, every such value or non-value needs to be expressed in a wider perspective. Reasonability. Value education cannot be taught by laying down fixed rule, regulation, and commandments. Every value-based principle must appeal to individual reason in order to make an effective impact on the student's mind. Rules and ordinance, compulsive in nature, often face defiance, whereas principles appealing to reason are willingly compiled with. Versatility of value education. Value education is not merely a subject for learning. Its sole intention is to establish the values so learned in every aspect of the life of the learner. If the person is truly impressed by the value of truth, it must corroborate with his belief and action in real life. True assimilation of values must reflect itself in belief, speech, and action of the learner. Universal harmony. The prime concern and responsibility of value education is fulfilled when a learner experiences total harmony within and without. Only a person who enjoys harmony within can become an effective tool in establishing universal harmony. There is no mathematical and scientific formula that explain the technique of universal harmony. Only a value-oriented realization within can make a person feel the urgency for establishing harmony between each and every entity within the universe. Value education must make its learner realize that except human, every other inanimate and animate being helps maintain total harmony in nature. Once humans realize this fact through effective value education, they can themselves become an effective tool in establishing universal harmony. Coming on to the content of value education. The term value represents a multifaceted phenomenon. The values keep changing relatively from time to time and place to place and object to object. In this context, a course on value education must explain to its learners the values with respect to the following few points. First, individual aspects such as one's own thinking process, behavioral pattern, self-esteem, desire, and aspiration. Second, reciprocal values, rights, and responsibility between the following: an individual and his family, society and the country, an individual and the nature, an individual and a humankind in general, and the entire life form. Third is the mutual respect and equality between an individual and the entire existence. Moving further to discuss the process of value education as intended by the course. First, it intends to lead the student onto a path of self-exploration with respect to their intrinsic values and shortcomings through gentle guidance rather than just preaching. Self-realization of one's drawback is the best tool for self-improvement. Second, it will generally guide the students into self-evaluation in order to identify their cherished desires, ambitions, and aspirations. It will also help them to identify their hidden talents which may lead them to actualize their aspirations. Third, it will help students in evaluating their justified or unjustified beliefs and thereby getting rid of certain preconditioning and misconception. Fourth, it introduces values in the form of gentle suggestions and allowing the students to analyze them and then accept them logically in case they meet their natural acceptance, otherwise reject them as guided by their own logic. Fifth, it will guide students in the process of experiential validation of the values they naturally accept. The last, acceptance or rejection of certain value-based suggestion naturally differs from one student to other. Whether accepted by someone or rejected by the other, values always remain as values. Therefore, the process needs to follow a healthy and open dialogue between the teacher and students for bringing more clarity into their own decisions to accept or reject certain suggestions. Such dialogues will lead to more value being accepted. Summary. Now, moving on to the summary of the above mentioned topic. In spite of different thoughts, pattern, likes, dislikes, values, humans want to live in the society for support, protection and individual prosperity. To meet this end, he must mold his individuality in a common social mold to gain acceptability in the society. This foundation course in value education attempts to identify such common essentiality which when fulfilled assure fulfillment, growth, prosperity and happiness not only for an individual but for the entire universal society. As wisdom help generate skills need for fulfillment, sharpening the wisdom of larger number of individuals through education is necessary to ensure that success and fulfillment is achieved by a larger number. Value education must make its learner realize that except humans, every other inanimate and animate being helps maintain total harmony in nature. Once humans realize this fact through effective value education, they can themselves become an effective tool in establishing universal harmony. Thank you.